Great, thank you so much for having us. It's really great to be here in such a full room. Quickly then, we're from Sparck, and Sparck helps companies design and shape new products and new services and new ways of working and help them do digital transformation. And one pillar stone of that is artificial intelligence. So we thought we'd make this a bit fun, and instead of introducing ourselves, we'd try and introduce each other. See how that goes. So this is Simon. Simon is my boss. He's the guy who kicked all this off and started Sparck. And he's also the head of digital at BJSS, which is our parent company, if you like. So that's kind of Simon.
Thanks, Tom. I did rescue Tom from the dark side that is Accenture. And now he works in a cabinet where I've got his full support and the other cabinet meeting. So if there's any shenanigans going on with P45s, etc. today, you won't happen here. I think we've got full support. So we're talking about the future of AI. Why technology is changing everything. And what we're going to talk about really is called the fourth industrial revolution. And this is more than just a marketing term. You may have heard it, you may have seen it in the news, etc. And the reason is people like the World Economic Forum, so Davos, they don't just go away and spend all our money and getting drunk in Switzerland once a year. They actually do think of some things. And they define, as we stand on the brink of a technology revolution that will fundamentally alter the way we live, work, relate to one another in its scale and scope and complexity, the likes of we've not seen before. So that's one of the most influential organisations in the world, a huge thing, and we're already starting it, as we said earlier. So you may be wondering what it is. So the third industrial revolution was really about simple digitisation. And the fourth is about bringing combinations of technology together. Now, the third, if you can imagine, we book our airline tickets, we do all of our travel online, we do our banking online. All those things are just digitising things that we already did before. But it enables organisations to take cost out, to reduce the number of branches, etc., or the way that we book holidays and things like that. But that was the third industrial revolution. The fourth is about combining technologies. So, things that are buzzwords of the moment, but big data, 3D printing, bioelectronics, automation, AI, cryptocurrencies. What's happening is that technology is advancing across all of these areas and more at speed, all at the same time, which means that we can fundamentally start to put them in a mixing bowl and create new things that we didn't have before. So, today we're talking about AI. This was recently, this was like 2 weeks ago from Mr. Putin. So he's very clear. The country that leads in AI will be the ruler of the world. I mean, it's not, to come from someone like that and from the Davos type community. I mean, this is a massive thing that we're now starting a journey on. So this is one of the key messages you need to take away today. It's absolutely happening now. This isn't Space Odyssey 2001. This is today in our lives. And what we're going to show you today is a few examples of where it's happening. Every industry, including government, radically changing. Key message. So, back office functions are being automated, as we're seeing across sectors. So here's an example. This is a Japanese insurance company. So in Japan, risk-averse country, insurance, risk-averse sector. But this company, for example, is reducing back office by 34 people. They're taking them out of their claims department. Final payment for them, they're still slightly risk averse, so final payment is just done by a human, but they've invested less than 1.5 million and their payback is within 18 months of doing it. There's recently another company called Lemonade, I don't know if anyone's heard of that, in Australia. They've done the world record for settling a claim in 3 seconds. And basically they have 16 algorithms running in the background that check whether or not fraud is being committed or whether somebody's entitled to make a claim. So huge movement, but here, as we say, what's going to happen is lots of back office functions rapidly moving, being depleted, which is my rest in peace call centres. If anybody works in call centre, I apologise for that. But personalised healthcare. So we've all seen this in the news as well. So personalised healthcare, this is a reality. This is the Cancer Genome Project, if anybody's seen that. Basically, breaking down your own genome, looking at your own DNA, and then matching medicines to your specific type of cancer that you might have and how your body reacts to it and what the causes are. This is already working for certain breast cancers, for prostate cancers, etc. again, this is, it's not the future. This is absolutely happening today. Supply chains are evolving. Producers are shifting directly to consumers. So we saw in the news this week that Nike is coming under pressure for its revenue and its profits, and it's moving and shifting towards not reselling through other retailers, but actually doing it themselves, either through store or online. And that is a trend that's happening across things. So one of the areas is people like Procter & Gamble or Unilever, etc. They know, for example, they've known for years that the only reason you change from Persil to Ariel, for example, is if you go to Tesco's or Waitrose and it's not there on the shelf, you'll choose another product, and then you may start buying that product, and that becomes your habit. But what if they could have a little chip in there, the Internet of Things, there's a small chip at the bottom here, it gets to a third full, and they just send you it to your house. You never need to go to the supermarket again, it just shows up. Actually, they sell you already 12, 15 different products. Why don't they just send you a basket of stuff when it runs out? So we're already seeing things like that with Dollar Shave and stuff. And these companies are actually doing this today. They're innovating, they're practicing, they're seeing what is available and what people will accept. So for them, if you imagine your Tesco's, and now you're taking out 10, 15% of your product lines because they're being sold directly to customers. And for us customers, you think, oh, actually, it's a bit cheaper. And then for the producers, it's like, well, we can charge higher margins. This one, we all know about driverless stuff. So, the Uber, Hyperloop, I'm sure most people are aware of that, but you're getting a pod and it fires you off from Los Angeles to San Francisco. But we've had DLR in London and other major cities for decades. So these things aren't new. And then, obviously, driverless trucks on the road. But we can even automate lawyers, which I think is really interesting. So there's a chatbot lawyer. It started off with parking tickets, and it was a certain council, and the guy that did it was like 18, 19 years old. And so basically, if you've got anything with data, anything with rules, you can program it, and it can learn as well. You can put machine learning in there to actually act like a lawyer. And now, as it says up here, it's working across the US and over 1,000 different types of topics. So asylum seeking, applications, planning, all done automatically. Medicines are combining technology. This is quite scary as well. This is kind of a bit science fiction, but it's true. It's happening already. So bioelectronics, if you didn't know what it was implanting chips into your body that helps with your medication and your healthcare. So, for example, you might have one on your liver, or you might have diabetes, and it controls your insulin levels in your body, or controls your medicines that go with it. And then government. I mean, we're already seeing huge investment, billions of pounds by this government and governments all over the world around digitalisation. And that's all about enabling the citizen to be self-service, again, taking out costs, making it easier to use. So here are our friends at the tax office. They're already employing robots. And as we can see, 40% improvement in productivity, 18% cost saving in processing queries from the general public. And it's 24/7, and the payback, in this case, less than 6 months. So lots of technology coming together. Fast-paced turnaround and fast payback times as well for a lot of this stuff. And then finally, I couldn't resist this one. This is probably going back to Putin, but there is a worry that you get robots fighting robots, and you get kind of warfare, the likes of which we've never seen before. So I hope this is cheering you up. So what does it all mean? So disruption is across society, and it's non-linear as well. So it's not, historically, we would do something, we'd get a bit better, we'd get a bit better, we'd get a bit better. What's happening now is it's not. There are leaps, and there are kind of jolts to the left and right as well. There's also an acceleration of innovation. So as we said, a lot of those things are innovating. People are thinking about new ways of doing things. This one, there is a displacement, and there will be an ever-increasing displacement of low-skilled, low-paying jobs. So, the call centres, the back office staff, but also we're now starting to see it creep into things like lawyers, obviously taxi drivers, truck drivers, etc. And I think it's really interesting if you look at the news today. There's a strike today because they, about having a second guard or a guard on the trains and having a driver-only train. And you kind of think if people are getting upset and striking about that for months and months and months, you know, what is going to happen when they start to have whole call centres or sweeps of people's jobs go all at the same time. But this is the positive side, is that new industries will emerge. And so new jobs will emerge, new industries will emerge. And part of that is because the marginal cost of production will go down. And that basically means as we digitise everything, one more piece of software, the cost is almost zero. And that's why a lot of those costs that those companies are bearing, once they have their investment afterwards, the marginal cost is really tiny, is small. And we'll see that what that will mean is a lot more jobs will become commoditised and machines will do those jobs, and then we'll all start to think and be employed in doing more of the creative jobs. Oh. I've broken your phone, Tom.
That's all right, keep going.
So, and traditional organisations will go under. So by this, so I used to work at BP for a number of years and was a CIO there in one of the oil trading areas and ran global trading systems and stuff. And they're the types of organisations that are now coming under threat. So if you think about, you know, Blockbuster didn't digitise in terms of when we went media went online in digitisation. We're now going to start to see that in other organisations like the BPs, the Shells, especially if we get to peak oil and move over the other side. Is it working now? Do you want to keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
I'll just nod at you. And so politics and legislation won't keep up as well. So, you know, there's a lot of data, conversation going on, for example, and the rights and what data we give away. That legislation is far behind where the technology companies already are.
Actually, Simon, talking of politics and legislation,
I thought you were committed to the cabinet.
It's an odd one giving your boss a P45, but, you know, it happens.
I'll get you later, Boris. So for example, in the US, Amazon has 52% of the online retail market. There is no other industry in time where we have allowed one company to dominate a sector. Google has over 85% of the search market. You know, so therefore, it gets all the search revenue from the adverts that are displayed. So, I mean, these are things that legislators just aren't keeping up with, and we'll see that accelerate as well. Social unrest, well, I talked about that in terms of people going on strike. I'm going through these really quickly. AI, as I said, is at the core of that, and that's what we're going to talk about a bit more today. And Tom is going to talk specifically about assessment. And tomorrow is a plug for the workshop. If you want to come along, there'll be a fun event. It'll be a lot more uplifting than my talk now, I think, by the looks of your faces. Where we'll kind of imagine the future and what a positive future might look like using AI, and that will be our focus. I think it's because I'm out of range, Tom.
Oh, what a shame. Oh, well, there you go. It's the last slide.
Last slide. I'll hand it over to you. But the good news is, as we become more technology orientated and we have the technology at the base, to really stand out and to add value, we've got to be human focused. So the irony is, the more technology we use, the more AI we use, actually being human-centered and having emotional intelligence, etc., will be more and more important.
Thanks, Simon. You can tell we love technology when it works as well, which is great. So a bit more uplifting, I wanted to talk about the opportunities that lie ahead and some trends that are happening today that really are having an impact on this industry, and also looking outside the industry as well to see kind of what's coming around the corner. And everything I'm going to show you is a bit of a sneak peek, and we've actually got some trend papers that we've printed off, so please do come and grab one off us after this session if you're really interested in this stuff and you want to find out more. So the first one is about Google. So Google has actually transformed the way that we live and work, and we know that already. And digital natives like myself, we not only expect to use Google to consume information, but we expect to use services like Wikipedia, which are ultimately user-generated content to gather information. And we also expect to provide information to those services as well. So we're part of a giant network. So it's no real surprise that actually education has started to grapple with this change from learn and repeat to research and repeat. And there are some extreme examples. So in May this year, Ethiopia had to completely shut down its entire network internet across the whole country because some exam papers had been leaked online for 10-year-olds. And actually, that was obviously quite extreme. But for the most part, there is this shift happening in education around research. But I was thinking about this when I made this slide, and I thought, actually, is it that much of a shift? Because the tool you see behind you has been around in examinations and in education for a long, long time. And actually, the reason that that's okay is because you've got to know what to put in to get the right answer out, and obviously you have to show you're working out as well. So maybe it's a bit obnoxious to say, but Google is ultimately just a very advanced calculator. So the next one is virtual reality and Internet of Things and augmented reality. And my goodness, there's so many buzzwords around this. But actually, the potential to shift the way exams work is huge. And that's not just because you can give a great experience to students, although that is important. It's actually because you could gain insights as to how people are performing during the act of testing as opposed to just after the act. So, for example, you could have an augmented reality-driven service that enables you to dance or play golf or perhaps fly a fighter jet, whatever it is. Actually, these are things that you'd want to get real-time feedback on performance as opposed to just after the event. And not only can we actually test how a student interacted, but we could also perhaps understand why the student interacted in the way they did. So I think that's hugely exciting. There's some other examples here which play on that kind of same theme. But the real key behind all of this is data, and I know you've just heard a real talk around data and its importance. But the truth is that we don't need to create new data to answer these questions because there's a huge amount of existing data today already within learning management systems and content platforms. And if you actually want to do effective learning analytics, then what you need to do is look at those data sets to capture the hidden behaviors that are occurring. So let me simplify that a bit. You could use data about students that isn't just captured during assessment to be able to identify areas in assessment that a student finds challenging. You could perhaps nudge them to improve in certain areas. You could create personalized learning and personalized assessment modules. You could even predict test outcomes based on prior performance. And you could potentially identify attributes in students that make them succeed at some subjects more than others. And the opportunities for that are really endless. And so I really encourage you to have a look at that trends paper because there's a lot more in that, a lot more on this in that. So this is an interesting one because basic assessment has been done by systems for quite a long time, kind of automatic yes or no answers. That's nothing particularly new. But actually, it's advanced assessment that is really interesting in this space and the ability to judge normative results based on AI. And a good example is actually car crash testing because it applies to so many other fields. If we look at car safety tests, these analytics have gone in a very short amount of time from a basic pass or fail with a human actually making some normative decisions around that to computer-driven assessments that can actually analyze in real time the causes of failure. And in fact, there's so much data now about the causes of failure available that you could completely simulate vehicle tests with no tests actually involved where you have to crash a car into another car. Now, obviously, from a regulation point of view, they still have to complete that final hurdle, but they can do the entire simulation piece before they actually make metal meet metal. So the shift is about to occur in other forms of assessment too. I think what we'll see is a shift from basic automated testing to an opportunity where we'll be actually able to predict students' future performance and this is the key thing, make real-time interventions where necessary to improve the outcome. This phrase here has been used in marketing for years, and actually it's so relevant now for assessment. So here's an example, actually. So this one here, this is a hazard perception test reimagined by a Swedish startup. Now, I don't know, has anyone done a hazard perception test in recent years? Well, I mean, whether you did or didn't, it doesn't look any different from how it did 20 years ago. It's exactly the same, maybe with a computer screen as opposed to in a book. But actually, what we're looking at here is a computer-generated image that not only is incredibly realistic, but it's actually a simulation. So it's got random vehicle and random character behaviors within some predefined attributes. So actually, you could really imagine how this is not just rich in terms of the experience for the student, and that comes back to that human-centered point that Simon talked about before. But the insight you can gather from using something like this is enormous. So let's imagine you sit a student on a chair with a virtual reality headset, and you could potentially watch their pupil tracking. You could watch their pupil dilation. So you could actually understand not just how they're actually performing with the results, but you're actually able to understand how they're actually performing during the test. And you get way more insight out of that. So it's quite magical. One of the main challenges that my understanding, and I appreciate I'm not in the industry, and I might be completely wrong, but one of the main challenges I think that assessors face is understanding the student's intention when you only have a very small data set to go on, which is the student's answer. And actually, to enable an intelligent and holistic assessment experience, which really ought to be the goal, an AI system can help, and it really only needs to understand 3 things. The first thing is it needs to understand the curriculum, and that's quite easy. The second thing is it needs details about the steps that the students need to undertake in order to complete the curriculum. But thirdly, it needs to know what actually counts as success within those activities and the underlying behaviours that will count as success as well. And this has always been challenging, but recently UCL Labs in London has developed a tool called AI Assess, and it claims to have cracked these 3 data points. And they've actually developed a tool that allows to evaluate the working out that goes on behind the scoring of right and wrong. And the power of that, of course, is that you can actually give a student credit for their work despite actually not potentially ending up at the right answer, which, as we know, in a professional context, is absolutely crucial because we don't hire people because they make correct decisions time and time again. We hire people because they're clever and they make the right decisions along the way.